Hey everyone, welcome back to English Vibes.
Hi, we're so excited you're here today.
I'm John.
And I'm Maya. We're here to help you practice speaking English naturally.
If you enjoy our videos, don't forget to hit subscribe and give us a thumbs up.
Yes, please. It really helps us. So today, we're talking about common English mistakes that don't actually matter.
That's right. We'll discuss grammar rules that native speakers break all the time, mistakes that don't affect communication, and when perfection isn't necessary.
This is such a relief for learners. Many people stress about tiny errors that native speakers make constantly without even noticing.
Exactly. So let's get started. Maya, what's the main message we want to share today?
Communication is more important than perfection. If people understand you, you've succeeded. Small mistakes are completely normal and don't make you sound bad.
Right. Native speakers make mistakes all the time. Let's talk about which errors really don't matter.
Great. Let's start with the classic one. Who versus whom? Do people really use whom correctly?
Honestly, almost nobody uses whom in everyday conversation anymore. People say, who did you see? Instead of whom did you see?
Even though technically whom is correct as the object, right?
Exactly. But in casual speech, who works perfectly fine. You might hear whom in very formal writing or from older speakers, but it's dying out.
So if a learner never uses whom, that's totally okay?
Absolutely. In fact, using whom in casual conversation might make you sound overly formal or old-fashioned. Stick with who and you'll sound more natural. What about ending sentences with prepositions? Teachers always say don't end sentences with prepositions.
But native speakers do it constantly. Who are you talking to? Sounds much more natural than to whom are you talking?
Exactly. The rule about not ending with prepositions comes from Latin grammar. English works differently.
So sentences like, what are you looking at? Or where are you from? Are completely fine?
Not just fine, they're the natural, normal way to speak. The correct versions sound stiff and unnatural.
I love this. So many learners worry about this for no reason. What about literally? People complain about using it wrong.
Oh, the literally debate. Purists hate when people say, I literally died laughing, because you didn't actually die.
But everyone uses it for emphasis now, right?
Exactly. Literally has evolved to mean figuratively, but with emphasis. This has been happening for over a century.
So if I say I'm literally starving when I'm just very hungry, that's acceptable.
In casual conversation, absolutely. Everyone knows what you mean. In formal academic writing, maybe be more precise, but in everyday speech, it's fine. What about double negatives, like I don't need no help?
Ooh, this is interesting. In standard English, that's considered incorrect because two negatives make a positive, right?
Technically, yes, but in many English dialects, African American Vernacular English, Cockney, Southern American, double negatives are standard and completely grammatical within those varieties.
So it's not wrong, it's just a different dialect.
Exactly. Languages and dialects have different rules. What's wrong in one variety might be perfectly correct in another. The important thing is, does it communicate clearly?
And people definitely understand I don't need no help means I don't need any help.
Absolutely. Let's talk about less versus fewer. The rule says fewer for countable things, less for uncountable.
Like fewer cookies, but less sugar, right?
That's the traditional rule, but native speakers constantly say less for everything. 10 items or less in supermarkets, less people, less calories.
Is that becoming acceptable?
It already is in spoken English. While some careful writers maintain the distinction, in everyday speech, less works for everything.
So learners don't need to stress about this.
Not really. If you use fewer correctly, great. If you use less for everything, you'll sound like most native speakers.
What about split infinitives? To boldly go versus to go boldly.
What's a split infinitive? It's when you put a word between to and the verb. To boldly go splits the infinitive to go with boldly.
And this is supposedly wrong?
According to old grammar rules, yes, but it's another fake rule based on Latin. English isn't Latin, and split infinitives often sound more natural.
So to really understand versus really to understand, or to understand really?
To really understand sounds the most natural. The other options are awkward. Star Trek's famous line, to boldly go, wouldn't be as iconic if they'd said to go boldly.
So split infinitives are fine?
Completely fine. Use whatever sounds natural. What about starting sentences with and or but?
I was taught never to start sentences with conjunctions.
That's not really a rule. It's a guideline some teachers use to stop young students from writing choppy sentences. But professional writers start sentences with and but all the time.
So I went to the store, but it was closed is okay.
Perfectly okay. In fact, that can be stylistically effective, and it sounds natural in conversation.
I see what you did there. You started a sentence with and.
Exactly. It works, doesn't it? Let's talk about me and John versus John and I. This one confuses everyone.
The rule is John and I when it's the subject, John and me when it's the object, right?
Technically, yes. But here's the thing. Native speakers often get this wrong and nobody cares.
How so?
People say, me and my friend went to the movies all the time. Technically, it should be my friend and I, but in casual conversation, me and is extremely common.
So both are acceptable.
In casual conversation, yes. For formal situations or writing, stick with I as a subject. But don't stress if you mix them up in casual chat. What about using they as a singular pronoun?
Like someone left their bag instead of his or her bag?
Exactly. For centuries, English has used singular they when gender is unknown or irrelevant. Now it's also used for non-binary individuals.
So it's grammatically correct?
It's been used since the 14th century. Shakespeare used it. Jane Austen used it. It's completely standard.
But some people still complain about it?
Some do, but major style guides now accept it. It's more natural than he or she and more inclusive than defaulting to he. What about could've versus could have?
Oh, I see this online all the time. People write could've when they mean could have.
Right. This happens because could've, the contraction, sounds like could've when spoken.
So is could've acceptable?
In writing, no. It's definitely wrong. But here's the key. It only appears in writing because people write what they hear. When speaking, you can't tell the difference between could've and could've.
So as long as learners write could have or could've, they're fine?
Exactly. In speech, nobody can tell anyway, and in writing, use the correct form. What about ain't? That's always called wrong, right?
Teachers hate ain't, but people use it constantly.
Ain't is stigmatized in formal English, but it's a real word that millions of native speakers use daily. It's a legitimate contraction in many dialects.
So when is it okay to use?
In casual conversation among friends, it's fine and very common. In formal situations, job interviews, academic papers, avoid it. But don't think people who use ain't are uneducated. That's classist.
So it's about register, formal versus informal.
Exactly. Ain't isn't wrong, it's informal. Let's discuss pronunciation variations, like library. Many people say library instead of library.
Is that wrong?
It's a common variation. Language is about being understood, not pronouncing every syllable perfectly. If people understand you mean library, you've succeeded.
What about other simplified pronunciations?
February instead of February, Wednesday instead of Wednesday, interesting instead of interesting, all extremely common among native speakers.
So learners shouldn't worry about pronouncing every letter?
Exactly. Native speakers don't, so why should you? Focus on being clear, not perfect. What about irregardless? People say that's not a word.
I've heard it's wrong and you should say regardless.
Here's the controversial truth. Irregardless is in the dictionary. It's considered non-standard and redundant, but it's widely used and understood.
So is it okay to use?
In casual speech, some people use it and communication works fine. In formal writing or speaking, use regardless to be safe. But if you hear someone say irregardless, don't judge them.
It's about effective communication, not prescriptive rules.
Exactly. What about using like as a filler word? I was like so tired.
Young people use like constantly, and older people complain about it.
Every generation has filler words. You know, I mean, like is just the current generation's preferred filler.
So it's not wrong?
It's informal, but it's not wrong. In casual conversation, filler words are normal and help people think while talking. Informal presentations reduce them, but in everyday chat, they're fine. What about subject-verb agreement errors that don't affect understanding?
Like what?
The group are going versus the group is going. Both are used. British English often treats collective nouns as plural, American English as singular.
So both are correct?
In their respective varieties, yes. Or data is versus data are. Originally, data is plural, but almost everyone says data is now.
Language is evolving.
Constantly. What was wrong 50 years ago might be standard now. Let's talk about extra words and questions, like where are you at instead of where are you?
The at is unnecessary, right?
Technically, yes, but millions of people add it naturally. Does it change the meaning? No. Does everyone understand? Yes. So does it matter? Not really.
Same with where are you going to instead of where are you going.
Exactly. The extra to is redundant but super common in spoken English. What about mixing up good and well? Like, I'm doing good versus I'm doing well.
Technically, it should be well because you're describing how you're doing, right?
Correct, but I'm good and I'm doing good are so common that they're essentially standard in casual conversation now.
So both are acceptable?
In casual speech, absolutely. In formal writing, maintain the distinction, but nobody will misunderstand I'm good. What about between you and I versus between you and me?
Grammatically, it should be me because it's the object of a preposition.
Right, but many educated native speakers say between you and I because they overcorrect. They think I always sounds more proper.
So even though it's technically wrong, people say it?
All the time. It's hypercorrection, trying so hard to be correct that you make a mistake. But everyone understands both versions. Let's discuss vocabulary misuse, like nauseous versus nauseated.
What's the difference supposed to be?
Traditionally, nauseous means causing nausea, disgusting, while nauseated means feeling nausea, sick. So technically, you feel nauseated by something nauseous.
But people say I feel nauseous all the time.
Exactly, and dictionaries now accept both meanings for nauseous. Language evolves based on usage.
So if everyone uses a word a certain way, it becomes correct?
Eventually, yes, that's how language changes. Dictionaries describe how people actually use words, not prescribe how they should be used. What about using they when you mean he or she in definite contexts?
Like, if anyone calls, tell them I'm busy.
Yes, technically anyone is singular, so old rules say tell him or her, but singular they is much more natural and has been used for centuries.
So it's standard now.
Completely standard. It's been endorsed by major style guides, and it's the natural way English speakers handle this. Let's talk about comma splices, like I went to the store, I bought milk.
Those should be two sentences or connected with and, right?
Grammatically, yes, but in informal writing, texts, emails to friends, comma splices are everywhere, and communication works fine.
So context matters?
Absolutely. In a formal essay, avoid them. In a text to your friend, nobody cares. What about using hopefully to mean I hope, like hopefully it won't rain?
What's wrong with that?
Purists say hopefully should only mean in a hopeful manner, so hopefully it won't rain should mean the rain won't fall in a hopeful manner, which is nonsense.
But people use it all the time.
Exactly, and dictionaries now accept this meaning. The purists lost this battle decades ago.
What's the main takeaway for learners?
Don't stress about perfection. Communication is the goal. If people understand you, you've succeeded.
Right. Native speakers break rules constantly. Focus on being clear and natural, not perfect.
And don't judge yourself harshly for mistakes that native speakers make all the time.
Exactly. Language is about connection, not correctness. Okay, let's do our vocabulary review.
Yes, let's explain the important terms from today's discussion.
First word, prescriptive. Prescriptive means stating how language should be used according to rules, regardless of how people actually use it.
Prescriptive grammar tells you the correct way to speak, or prescriptive rules often don't match reality.
Prescriptive focuses on rules. Descriptive focuses on actual usage.
Next word, descriptive. Descriptive means describing how language is actually used by speakers.
Descriptive linguistics observes real language use, or modern dictionaries are descriptive, not prescriptive.
Descriptive grammar accepts that language changes and varies.
Next, dialect. A dialect is a variety of a language specific to a region or social group.
Southern American English is a dialect, or every language has many dialects.
Dialects aren't inferior to standard language. They're legitimate varieties with their own rules.
Next word, register. Register is the level of formality in language, casual, neutral, or formal.
Adjust your register based on context, or formal register for interviews, casual register for friends.
Choosing the right register is more important than following every grammar rule.
Next, hypercorrection. Hypercorrection is making a mistake because you're trying too hard to be correct.
Saying between you and I is hypercorrection, or hypercorrection comes from overthinking rules.
People hypercorrect when they overcorrect based on misunderstood rules.
Next word, stigmatized. Stigmatized means regarded with disapproval or considered shameful by society.
Ain't is stigmatized in formal English, or some dialects are unfairly stigmatized.
Stigmatization is often based on classism or prejudice, not linguistic validity.
Next, colloquial. Colloquial means used in informal conversation rather than formal writing.
That's a colloquial expression, or colloquial speech includes contractions and slang.
Colloquial language is normal in everyday speech.
Next word, contraction. A contraction is a shortened form of words where letters are omitted.
Don't is a contraction of do not, or contractions make speech more natural.
English uses contractions constantly in spoken language.
Next, redundant. Redundant means unnecessary because it repeats information already present.
The at in where are you at is redundant, or redundant words don't add meaning.
Even redundant elements can be acceptable in casual speech if they're conventional.
Last word, evolve. To evolve means to change gradually over time.
Language evolves constantly, or grammar rules evolve with usage.
What's wrong today might be standard tomorrow as language evolves.
So we learned prescriptive, descriptive, dialect, register, hypercorrection, stigmatized, colloquial, contraction, redundant, and evolve.
These are 10 essential words for understanding how language really works.
The big lesson? Language is flexible, context matters, and communication beats perfection every time.
Don't let fear of mistakes stop you from speaking. Native speakers make mistakes constantly, and nobody cares.
Now it's your turn. We have a question for you.
Write in the comments, what English rule have you worried about that now seems less important?
Or tell us, what mistake do you make that native speakers make too?
We love hearing from you. Share your experiences in the comments.
Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already.
And turn on notifications so you never miss a video.
Keep practicing your English every day. You're doing amazing.
And remember, mistakes are proof you're learning and trying. They're completely normal.
See you in the next video.
Goodbye, everyone. Speak confidently. Quick vocabulary review. 1. Prescriptive. Stating how language should be used according to rules. 2. Descriptive. Describing how language is actually used. 3. Dialect. Variety of language specific to region or group. 4. Register. Level of formality. Casual, neutral, formal. 5. Hypercorrection. Making mistakes by trying too hard to be correct. 6. Stigmatized. Regarded with disapproval by society. 7. Colloquial, used in informal conversation, not formal writing. 8. Contraction, shortened form of words, don't, can't, won't. 9. Redundant, unnecessary because it repeats existing information. 10. Evolve, change gradually over time. Speak confidently. Mistakes are normal.